With the cancellation of so many in-person events, Manufacturing Day 2020 will definitely look a little different this year. Rather than physically opening our doors to students, we're taking this opportunity to engage with one another to explore ways for us all to work better together to promote the high-paying, high-tech, and high-demand manufacturing careers that have propelled Indiana to be the most manufacturing-intensive state in the entire country. So before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. Today's roundtable is being recorded, and we'll make that recording available to all that registered here in the next few days. We'll have 3 separate panel discussions. The first 2 sessions will be approximately 20 minutes each, with 5 minutes at the end of each session to answer questions that may be submitted throughout the discussions. The third panel is scheduled for 30 minutes with 20 minutes at the end for some general Q&A and some wrapping up at the end. We should wrap up today's session around 11 o'clock. We highly encourage participation from our online audience. Please use the Q&A feature on Zoom to submit your questions, and we'll attempt to relay these to the panelists during the Q&A discussions at the end of each panel. For any questions not answered during the event, we'll get these answered and send out a summary to all those who registered. Also during this discussion, we'll be using a polling feature to get your feedback on a few items, and also we'll have some open-ended questions posed to all the panelists, posed to everyone so the panelists can give feedback on that. And again, we appreciate everyone's participation in getting feedback on these open-ended questions. The moderator for today's event is Malika Butler, Assistant Vice President, Governmental Affairs for Indiana Manufacturers Association. Malika serves on our Manufacturing Day Planning Committee and has played a huge role in organizing today's event. So I'll hand it over to Malika.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you everyone for joining us today. And just so you're aware, our attendees are about 50% industry, 50% education, so it's a great demographics of who we have listening in today, and hopefully, we'll start some great conversations that we can spread around the state. I will be moderating the 3 panels that we're hosting today. And up first, we are going to hear from 3 business leaders in the manufacturing industry and discuss challenges and workforce needs that their businesses face. So Katie, I will kick it off to you for brief introductions.
My name is Katie Jacobsen. I'm president of Tube Processing Corporation. Tube Processing Corporation is a family-owned business. We have been in business 80 years. We have 2 divisions. One is CTP, it's commercial tube processing. We're a manufacturer of particularly tubing and sheet metal components for off-road industry, like the heavy land moving equipment, Caterpillar, Cummins, Volvo. And our other division is Aerofab. Aerofab is a manufacturer of complex sheet metal and machining components for aircraft engines. Primary customer base would be General Electric aircraft engines, Pratt & Whitney, Siemens, Rolls-Royce, etc. We currently employ just slightly under 500 employees.
I'm Kendra O'Brien. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources here at Major Tool and Machine. We're hosting Manufacturing Day today. We are a custom machining and fabrication manufacturer, primarily in the defense industry currently. We have a little over 400 employees. I've been with Major Tool for 26 years almost in November, and I'm responsible for training, development, recruiting, comp, benefits, all the things that normally go along with HR.
I'm Clay Barnes. I'm president and CEO of MPI Corporation. MPI Corporation was founded in 1958, a privately held company here in Indiana. We have 4 companies under management. Small Parts Incorporated is a precision metal stamping company that makes components used really in like automotive applications, construction applications, things like that. So you'll see us in appliances, electrical breakers in your home, power drills, things like that. Our second company is ABC Metals, which is a metal slitting and distribution company. We sell non-ferrous metals, copper, brass, bronze predominantly, for use in electrical and sometimes bearing applications. And then we have a third company, HTI, which is an off-stamper heat treating company that changes the molecular structure of steel to harden it, usually for automotive application. Something like a seat belt buckle would be an example of an application. And then we own C.H. Ellis, which is a custom case manufacturing company that builds commercial and industrial cases to protect products like portable renal dialysis equipment and high-end microphones. Also do tool pallets for field service applications like telecommunication repair, military equipment repair, that kind of stuff. Unlike most holding companies, we are not a financial engineering organization. We're very much an operating company. We've got roughly 550 employees right now across 11 plants in North America, many of those here in the state of Indiana.
Thank you all for sharing your expertise with us today. We're really excited to hear from you. And you all represent a very critical industry in Indiana. I'd like to kick us off by starting out with sharing some challenges that your businesses are currently facing.
Currently, I would say, as far as tube processing is concerned, last year was a peak year in the industry. Both aerospace and the commercial engine market were very strong. And during that time, one of the asks of the OEMs on both sides was, what are you doing to increase your workforce? What initiatives are you doing to make sure and ensure that we're fulfilling all of the product line demands? And I can assure you, it was tough. It was tough to find the correct population to bring into the workforce, especially a population that understood manufacturing and that had the skill set that was required to get to the level that we needed to be to output what we needed to be. There's a lot of training that goes on. Most of the jobs that we have, whether it's going to be a welding, whether MIG or TIG welding, a furnace operator, a coating operator, a tube bender, sheet metal fabricator, all of them require a certain amount of training and understanding. And if people come in and they're new to the process and don't understand, there's a certain amount of training. We have very stringent quality requirements on both sides. And as you can imagine, on the aerospace side, you have to go through multiple levels of training before you are authorized to produce certain product. And at that point, when you start from the base and the ground, it's a long process. And I would say that that would be a challenge. And there's only so many hours a day. You know, we had people working 10 hours a day mandatory overtime, and we even went as far as like on weekends to ask people to come into work, and as an incentive, not only on top of time and a half, they received a $100 bonus for working a minimum of 4 hours every weekend. So those are challenges we find. Finding the right kind of person, understanding the industry, and probably realize that manufacturing isn't what it was before. And I would say those would be the main challenges.
And I can just echo everything that Katie just said, other than the bonus stuff. We have to do that to get people to work overtime. But definitely workforce is the biggest challenge. So we know that we cannot find the number of experienced, high-level, skilled people that we need to fill our positions. And so we've spent a lot of time in the last several years focusing on high school graduates and training, and people might be in a career transition, and steering them towards manufacturing to start with. Just making sure that people are aware of the opportunities in manufacturing, and we're going to talk a lot about education, and that college is not necessarily a requirement. And so how do we get that word out to people? Not just for Major Tool and Machine, but how are we spreading the word that manufacturing is an extremely viable, high-paying, not dirty career, that not just kids coming out of school, but other people, again, who are working in other, maybe call it underemployed type occupations. How do we get them into the more skilled technical positions that are really required today?
Great. It's going to be hard for me to, do something different than these guys. I will say that reemergence from COVID is that crisis has been difficult for us. We've gone from, in our particular case, from 0 to 100 miles an hour in about 1 second, and it shut down basically about a sixth of annual national production for that 2-month period in April and May, being in the automotive and sort of construction industries. And we've seen just this incredible pent-up demand come back. And frankly, we can't find enough people. How about enough bodies, skilled or not skilled, to get the output that we need to get out. So that's sort of the short-term problem. And longer term, I'll go down the economic side, and economic growth is something that is a concern for me. And based on a lot of the stimulus and frankly, for the last 10 years, the level of government spending, we've got a national debt problem, and the debt to GDP level being above World War II levels when we were selling war bonds to stay afloat, sooner or later is going to come home to roost. And when that happens, economic growth is going to be problematic, and the likely next big recession will come from that origin, that place of origin. And so preparing for that, and then preparing a workforce, I think we've got something like, I can't remember, 30 to 40% of our skilled workforce will be retiring in the next decade. And trying to replace that skilled workforce, especially in those difficult to find skills like tool making and design and things like that, that'll be a very difficult challenge for us as well.
So that's a good segue to my second question. I know, especially with the pandemic, a lot of manufacturing companies are exploring different innovative technologies and deployment of artificial intelligence. What do you guys think the workforce and your current positions will look like in the next 5 to 10 years? What kind of skills will you be looking for?
So I would say that through the industry in general, the automation has changed tremendously. The advancement in the type of equipment that we would purchase, capital expenses that we would purchase, it's becoming much more automated. You know, in the past, what people had to do by hand and the resources that were used, even from engineering, has changed dramatically. You know, you have CAD and you have models now, and before there was a lot of hand drawing. You know, it's as time goes on, the resources, the capital resources that we use are much more advanced. And I would say that although you know, we have the same number of people to use those, the ability to understand and use those pieces of equipment will probably become more advanced as well. As far as the pandemic and how it hit, I can tell you as a manufacturer, you tried to scout out everything that you can think of that might hit. And again, you know, we're straddling two worlds. We're an aerospace manufacturer, and then we are a manufacturer for you know, the ground diesel engine market. I worry. I think any business owner worries. We try to protect our employees. We try to make sure that we're always running ahead to open doors and make sure the path is clear. The aerospace industry got hit hard with our 2 aircraft disasters that happened with the Boeing MAX, and it really kind of grounded our efforts for the commercial market for a while. It still has. I think that with the pandemic, you don't always think about the other things that can happen like that. That's something I never would have thought of. Fortunately, both of our divisions were deemed critical essential, and we were able to maintain our production line. But as far as the next 5 years now that this has happened, I can honestly tell you, I don't even know if I can even profess to know, you know, what's going to happen next. I don't know on the aerospace side when it's going to recover. I was talking to people yesterday, and they're predicting 2023 to 2024. Now, on our other side, on the diesel engine market business, they're already coming back strong. We had a reduction in headcount, and already we are looking at having to employ mandatory overtime to fulfill those demands. So it's a mixed bag. And I don't know, I just know that the workforce will have to change with the automation that's going to probably be presented to us.
So I think from a technology standpoint for us, there's a lot of changes, of course, with technology. But when you talk about machining and welding, there will always be some component of that, I believe, that will require a person and hands-on. So it is not, even if technology continues and we use some robotics and a lot of automation in some areas, it still takes a person to understand that technology, to make it go, and to fix it when it breaks down. Yeah. And so I'm concerned that some people might get the thought that automation, we see articles where, you know, robots are replacing people. I don't think that's really the case. That's, you know, maybe someday, but years and years and years, generations ahead of where we're at today. We were talking about programming a couple of weeks ago, and one of our managers said, you know, we don't know where we're going to be with modeling in 20 years. We might be taking a lump of clay and using that clay to actually model a part through some other form of technology where, we talked about 3D printing and the impact that it has had on our workforce already. We do use that. And so there's all kinds of things that obviously nobody's thought of yet, that someday we might be doing things entirely differently, but it's still going to take people and very highly skilled, educated, trained people to make that technology work.
So up to me. So my view is that as we look at technology, and let's start with automation as opposed to AI for a second, because I know we touched on that. If we've got a single task, repetitive job, the reality is that at some point it'll either be offshored or it'll be automated. And I think you've seen the emergence of that over the course of time. But as Kendra said, I don't think that means that we have a workforce that's gone. I think we've just got a changing workforce. And if you look at AI and on that front of it, the general AI where, computers take over all decision making and that kind of stuff is, it's going to be, that may be applicable long after I'm gone, and maybe me being gone is not such a long time anymore, but it's long after I'm out of the workforce. That's general AI. That's very different than narrow AI, which I think its application is in place now and is emerging and getting faster and bigger. And I think one of the major problems for the workforce is how to apply AI in the right place to get the biggest bang for the buck, frankly, right? And so as we look at skills, we start looking at, a workforce that needs to be tech savvy. And there's a difference between someone who's designing or creating technology and someone who's executing on that created design. And, the designers are, be high paid, high demand sort of positions, but the executors still have to be very tech savvy to interface with what's going on. And we see that even on our factory floors now. I mean, we're talking about issuing handheld devices, not only for helping people hear in loud noises, right, with earphones and ear protection, so they can communicate in loud places, but use that as a communication device, as an output, a data reading device. So everyone has to be tech savvy now. So that's, I guess, the first thing I'd say. The second is they have to be adaptable. And when you start putting in new AI applications, even in the narrow sense, you have to adapt to a constantly changing work environment. And that requires agility, that requires flexibility from a workforce. And they'll have to adapt to more roles, solve more problems they haven't been taught how to perform. And that requires them to sort of research, to try, to fail, and to iterate. And one of the interesting things from a school, one of the things we learn from K through 12 and into college, frankly, is this idea that there's a textbook, right? You learn a concept in a textbook, you go home, you do your homework, right? And you're rewarded for doing that. And I think one of the things we teach our people to unlearn is that methodology. And that we really want them to, go into a problem they have absolutely no idea how to solve, do the appropriate research, try things out, iterate, fail, improve on that. And, there's no textbook for you once you get out in the work environment to understand the concept that you're getting into. And so the adaptability of the workforce becomes important. So tech savvy, adaptability, and then collaboration is the third one that I would say is going to change even more than it is now. I think if you collaborate, you have to collaborate now to be effective in business. But I think that increases substantially, especially as roles shift substantially as technology gets put into place. Collaborating across lines with different subject matter experts becomes a more critical skill. So tech savvy, which I think most of our kids are pretty tech savvy at this point in life, right? Adaptability, which is something I'm not sure that we ingrain in folks. And then the collaboration skills. And that's not necessarily, speaking the Queen's English, right? That's about being an effective listener and being an effective communicator of thoughts. Usually succinctly, which is difficult for me to do. So I'll stop there.
No, that's
leave it to you,
great.
Mike.
So what I'm hearing is agility is most important when you're looking at bringing in someone who's going to come into your workforce, being able to be agile, because we're ultimately preparing for a workforce that we don't even know what the skills are going to be. We know they're going to be technical. We know they're going to involve critical thinking, but ultimately it's unknown. We just know it's coming. So we need to have education prepare our workforce for those skills. So that next question is how can K through 12, post-secondary, how can they support our workforce needs? How can they support, what curriculum, what can we learn from education to kind of prepare for a workforce that we have no idea what it's going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years?
I would say probably for us, the most important thing for K through 12 would be the idea that going into a manufacturing career is an option. It's a viable option. It's a good option. And I feel that right now, a lot of the students are directed towards a college-based next step. And I think it fails the children to some degree, because not every child is probably the college path is not the best path for them. I've seen it in my own family. I've seen it growing up with my siblings. And sometimes kids go down the college path because they think that's what they're supposed to do, but maybe it fails them ultimately because it's not where they're supposed to be. Manufacturing can be a very good career for somebody, the right person, somebody who embraces it or has a desire to understand the manufacturing process. I hope that the stigma changes, and that when we talk about options for our children, that we mention going into the manufacturing realm, because I told the group last week that manufacturing and what it is today and the value and the respect that those jobs hold is very high. You can have an employee who is on the clock that will make more than me. There are employees who have an hourly wage of $32 an hour. And with overtime, they make very good money. They're very respected. Manufacturing can't survive without the doers. You can do without me. I'm not necessary. The people who actually are there making things, those people are so valuable. And if we don't allow them to understand what a rewarding position that is, to know that they're the ones making things happen, then manufacturing in this country will fail. And it's really unfortunate, because it can provide a very good career for somebody.
And again, echo what Katie said. I'll just add to that I agree that kids often get channeled towards college at a very young age, and they don't understand the options that might be available to them. But I can also remember my own time at school and my son's time. It's like, why are they teaching me this? Why do I need to learn this? I'm probably never going to use this. Manufacturing uses a lot of the academic foundational skills that we teach: math, science, communications, proper English. All of those things are still required for people coming into a manufacturing facility. So just because you're not going to college doesn't mean those things are not important. And so how do we tell kids that, yes, you are going to use this stuff. This is maybe the way you're going to use it in the future. And maybe you're going to use it the day after you graduate, or maybe you're going to use it while you're in high school and you're doing an internship at a manufacturing facility. So how do we integrate the options that kids have after high school at an earlier age, so they start to become aware of that and say, oh, so this is maybe the path I'm going to go down, and this is why this is important. Maybe I should pay attention to the things that I'm learning in class, and how am I going to get paid for this knowledge that I have once I get out of school?
Right, and it's, K through 12, actually, what we've got educators in the audience right now, and in a prep meeting, I listened to these guys and was incredibly inspired by, the things they're doing, and understanding that getting a diploma is not the end product. It's getting someone ready for life and for a career and for being a productive member in society. And the guys who you'll hear speak in a little bit are amazing at advancing that message. So the first is to have, more districts, more education folks, really promoting that concept and partnering with the manufacturing community to drive curriculum, to relate, to partner in making each of our collective community, that much better. And then kind of on the thread that the two ladies next to me talked about, promoting manufacturing as a viable option. The fact of the matter is, I'm going to use an IMA quote, but what Indiana makes Indiana. Manufacturing is the most intensive, or Indiana is the most manufacturing intensive state in the United States, and it accounts for 30% of our direct GDP, or excuse me, GSP in the state of Indiana, and it's the largest employer in the state of Indiana. So no matter what you do in the state of Indiana, somehow you're going to be affected by manufacturing. And so the education system needs to support that idea. To be able to support the manufacturing side. And as it relates to college or not college, we've got several different paths. We've got folks that have graduated from college, folks that have graduated from vocational technical schools, high school graduates, and all that really does is determine where you start in the organization. But where you end up is really a function of sort of individual advancement, individual skill sets. And it's common for someone who, say, is hired in production maybe to move into a quality engineering role or a toolmaker apprentice role in, say, 3 to 5 years, where we might hire someone directly out of engineering school into a quality engineering role. But the guy who comes from high school and works his or her way into that role, say 3 to 5 years, is usually much more mature, much more capable at that point than the person coming out of college. So again, college is not necessarily the best path. The question is whether or not that college actually pushes you toward an educational path that makes sense for your future. In our case, and I think several other companies do this, we tend to pay for college. If someone has a need and it's in their direct responsibility area, we'll pay for a degree, say in engineering or something like that. We've actually even funded lots of MBAs because we knew that these were future business leaders and we wanted them to have that business background. So for an employer to pay for school is not a big deal. And when you contrast that, coming out of high school, say spending 3 to 5 years in a work setting and going back to college, you're probably going to get it paid for. And you're probably going to be better prepared to take on that college education than you were if you were at 18 years old. If you're anything like me at 18, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I certainly didn't have the maturity level at that point to get serious about college studies either, and my GPA showed. Maybe promoting the manufacturing side, as they've said. We've kind of gone down the college path of whether or not it's a critical next step. The only difference between someone coming out of high school and someone out of college is 4 years of maturity, 18 years old versus 22 or 23 or 24. The other thing is that because we push people down the path of college education, typically your best and brightest in high school go down the college path. If we had that kind of raw material coming straight out of high school into our organization, my guess is at the end of 4 years, they'd be in a much better position to be, moving up our organization than someone candidly coming straight out of college. So again, I think college has its purpose. There's a question about whether it's a value right now, given the price. But I think there are other paths that we ought to be exploring, including maybe a high school to work to college sort of path, or a high school just to work path. So a lot more than maybe your question asked me.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you. And while you guys were submitting your answers for this, we launched a poll about perceptions of manufacturing earnings in Indiana, what the average earning is. And majority of our participants actually said that they thought it was between $50,000 to $75,000. And average earnings in Indiana is $70,000 for a manufacturing employee. So that's why Manufacturing Day is so critical. I mean, we offer lucrative careers, and that's what we want our incoming graduates to know. That's why we want them to talk about manufacturing. So we've got a few more minutes left just to wrap up. Ultimately, what are you looking for from an Indiana graduate? If you're looking at someone to come and work for you, what are you looking for? High level.
seriously, what we are looking for is somebody who has an attitude of positivity. I can assure you, once somebody has the attitude of being open-minded, you can do anything. The people who even despite the level of education or skill, if the attitude is one of negativity, closed off, not willing or wanting to grow or do better, it's hard. If we have seen people who have come in with very little skill set with the actual manufacturing mind, but they're open-minded, they want to learn, and they have gone all the way up to levels of their skill because they were open-minded. We try very hard to cross-train our employees. One of our core fundamental business ideas is that when we have employees who are cross-trained and they understand multiple jobs, and we're a very vertically integrated facility, when they can do multiple jobs, then basically they can move to where the work is. And they're not at risk as much when you have a downturn in a particular cell or a particular product line. They can move to where there is more work. That versatility and that willingness to learn multiple skill sets makes them a more valuable employee. It also allows them to be more employable. And if they were to leave our facility and go someplace else, once you have learned multiple skill sets, the doors in manufacturing are wide open, and your opportunity to grow and to expand your horizons is endless, really. So I would say for me it would be an open-mindedness, a positive attitude to learn more, and that versatility.
And I'd agree. Attitude, sometimes even over aptitude, sells us on a candidate. The showing up for work is really important. We obviously don't always know how that's going to work out when we're interviewing someone, but whenever we do plant tours and we have students come through, that's one of the things we really stress is attendance policies at school systems are generally much more lax than what you'll find in any manufacturing facility. And so that is a huge transition for students when they go into the workforce. They have to be there every day. They have to follow a much stricter attendance policy. They don't get every holiday off. And so that student to adult transition, the person really has to be prepared for that, and very quickly. And if they're not prepared for that, they need to adapt. We don't talk about agility. They need to be agile on making that transition really quickly.
Yeah, so right now, if you can pass a drug screen and you don't have a violent felony, we'll hire you. No, I'm kidding. That's not.
They breathe.
Actually, that's almost true, frankly. That's how urgent the need is for a workforce right now. To be honest with you, it's that pressing. But when we screen, we're screening for a lot of the things that these ladies talked about as well. So they have to fit with our values, which are integrity, excellence, and service, and that's our initial screen. And if you can't pass through that sort of screen, there's no way we'll hire you. After that, it's really about drive and attitude. And if you come with some level of education, we'll figure out how to deploy you, and we'll figure out what your gifts and that intersection of gifts and interests, and find that place where you're going to be successful. And that's part of what we do as an organization, which may or may not be unique to our organization, is, again, that intersection of giftedness versus interests. So that's the kind of things we're looking for. I want to pick up real quickly on a quick thread, and I know we're tight on time, on pay, right? We've got several 6-digit positions in our organization. I mean, we're a manufacturing company, right? Low tech, low wage, hostile environment, which is completely opposite of the truth of what you'll see in manufacturing. It's all high tech, it's all clean, very safe, very environmentally conscious. They're phenomenal, most complex, challenging organizations I've ever seen, which is one of the reasons why we're in the business of bringing them into our our holding company. But we've got several six-digit jobs out there. I've got an operating president who came to us as an operator that we paid for his engineering degree and now runs a very engineering-intensive organization at this point. We've got another guy who came to us again as an operator with a high school degree, does not have a college degree, is running another one of our companies. So we've got a variety. We've got several vice presidents that, again, don't have college education. So we range from having advanced master's degrees all the way to having high school. Once you get into the organization, it's really about the attitude, the drive, your willingness to learn, and finding that intersection of giftedness and interest. So that's what we found.
Great. Well, thank you, all three of you. That's excellent feedback today and great participation. And majority of our education attendees today believe that hands-on experience is the best way to inform students about career paths and career exploration. So that's a great segue to our second panel that we'll hear from with educators, and we'll take a few minute break right now. So now we're going to hear innovative ways from the education community and how these three superintendents are aligning the workforce with education in their communities. Paul, please kick us off with introducing yourself.
Thank you for having us here today. My name is Paul Ketcham, and I'm the superintendent at Batesville Community School Corporation, which is located equidistance between Cincinnati and Indianapolis on I-74.
I'm Matt Prusiecki, superintendent of the Metropolitan School District of Decatur Township, southwest corner of Indianapolis, and we're in Indianapolis.
Thank you for having us. I'm Bob Hacker. I'm the superintendent of White River Valley School District. We're a small rural district, 45 minutes southwest of Bloomington. Certainly happy to be here today.
Well, thank you for being here. So to start us off, how is the education community preparing to meet the workforce demand? Big question.
Well, for us, we have a wonderful symbiotic relationship in Batesville, Indiana with our local manufacturers, and we're well aware that the relationship includes having great schools, because great schools attract talent, right? Businesses want to be able to recruit talented people from across Indiana, so you want to have good public schools. And we also understand that there's an economic impact. We don't really produce widgets. We have students. We understand that if employers are successful, they're going to bring more employees, which brings more students to our corporation. And we also understand they're going to be taxpayers, whether it's tax levies for our operations or whether it's sales tax. And we understand that in Batesville, out of our top 5 employers, 4 are manufacturers. So we are motivated to see our manufacturers do well. There is a residual effect, right? If the manufacturers are doing well and their service industry is doing well, healthcare is doing well. So again, it's all about understanding the importance of each other's roles in the community. And we learned early that we're motivated as a corporation to do our part. And it's also, and I think Matt and I were talking offline, it's the right thing to do for kids. Mm-hmm. We want Batesville High School diploma to have value. And whatever that value means is if they come into a business, they're going to be agile, they're going to be motivated, they're going to be problem solvers, and they're going to be able to make your organization better. And again, we want them to have success in life. So that's why we're motivated to do the right thing for kids with the obvious partnership that we want our manufacturers to be successful.
Okay, to add to that, I would say that as far as our goal is always seen as to graduate students from high school, but I'll go beyond that step, as Paul was mentioning just a second ago, is that we're really trying to place students into careers and opportunities beyond high school. I think it's very critical that it's not just a diploma any longer, as really as we look at outcomes-based opportunities for students, be it in enrollment in college, be it employment, or be it in the armed services, the 3 E's that we always refer to. But I think the critical piece and why we're here today is really to talk about the genuine opportunities and really the responsibility of K-12 education to be able to put together and link up partnerships with business and opportunities to afford those great avenues of success for our students. And that's the thing, that college is a great thing, but it's not made for everyone. And I think the critical piece that we see as educators is that we try to match up students with the opportunities that are in front of them. And I think that's a great emphasis moving forward, is that once you get a diploma, our job is to really open those doors. And this is where the group before us I took pictures of everyone there so that we can start linking up our students with you, because being in Indianapolis, it's amazing how you could be next door neighbors to someone and not even realize the opportunities that's there. So I think that's really our focus moving forward and as far as K-12 education.
Our role is to develop local talent. He talked about economics. We started down at White River Valley about 7 years ago with our Economic Development Commission, and we did a study where our county was sending 68% of our kids to four-year college, but only 28% were going back for that second year. So that leaves an awful lot of talented people with nothing to do, basically. So in working with our manufacturers, working with our local businesses, working with our Economic Development Commission, we've been able to develop some unique programs that talk about all the characteristics that our business partners need. We have 800 in my school district. We just were involved with a regional opportunity grant, Ready Schools grant, where we did 1,100 interviews of parents and students, and we went out to businesses and we said, what exactly do you need from us? Where are we going with the future? And we developed our 10 tenets of we're the Wolverines. We heard earlier about all the characteristics. Well, all the characteristics that were listed there are in our 10 tenets. And we start that with our PK program, our pre-kindergarten students. So they're hearing that language all the way through to graduation. Again, our role is a lot more than just educating kids. We're trying to build our communities, and we're trying to develop our local talent.
Thank you. And Matt, you specifically mentioned outcomes, and I'd love to explore that a little more. If you could kick us off with this next question is, what specific policies or programs have you implemented in your school system to support life after high school for students?
Sure. When you get into high school, obviously you start getting into credits and the requirements that you need to graduate. And I think the critical focus there is that, obviously we're not taking away from those things that would prepare you for things like college, mathematics, English and such, but really beginning to move towards opportunities to take classes and develop and get those credits to make it a win-win scenario where you're achieving that high school diploma like I referenced before, but you're actually giving those opportunities, the state's new development of pathways to where you can actually plug students in with opportunities with businesses and job-related skill opportunity in classes that can help prepare them and get them exposed to life after high school. So it isn't just sitting in the class in rows of 5 in a classroom of 30 learning mathematics, but it's actually going above and beyond that and getting hands-on opportunity, getting that relationship with those that are either in the field or even those that are retired from the field that come back and teach. And I think that's the big piece, is that we've really taken the initiative of trying to match up with businesses, with community college that supports that opportunity. We're just having that discussion a second ago, but actually pulling that all together to where course credits, getting to graduate, which is of course a very widely accepted goal, high school graduation, but beyond that is actually getting those classes that are going to be the win-win of catapulting them into those students into those outcome basis opportunities. And I think that's the focus that we have to go to.
Anyone else care to share what you're doing in your school community?
We've launched a rather unique situation where every junior and senior in our school system is part of one of 7 student-led businesses, be that precision machining, advanced manufacturing, art. We've worked with ag power, all those types of situations where our students are involved every single day, 88 minutes in the classroom. They're running the business. We have a logistics team. It's totally outside the box, but we listen to what our business partners have said to us, and we're a little different. These gentlemen are at big schools. I'm at a small rural school where we can adjust those outcomes. We still have our 30% of our kids who are going to college, All our kids still take the solid things, but they're getting the actual business experience and partnership. For example, we had a meeting last night with Metal Technologies. It's a precision machining company in a neighboring town. They're going to give our kids actual business. The kids design it on Mastercam. They go in, they run the CNC machine, and they're actually putting a product out. And so it's a rather unique system, but with the creation of pathways and the creation of CTE monies, our small schools actually can outperform our big schools because we can give that personal attention.
Yeah, at Batesville, we have a unique partnership with Ivy Tech Community College and our local manufacturers. And just to give you an example, Bob, I'll push back. We're not a big school. We're about 2,100 students, not nearly as big as Matt's school. But about 65% of our graduating seniors go on to a four-year institution. Now, what we've done with Ivy Tech is the majority of those 65% have their freshman year under their belt. It's called the STGEC, which basically it's a core 30, transfers to any state tuition, any state institution, and a lot of private institutions. So we recognize that 65, 70% of kids are going to go to a four-year college, but those 30 to 35% of students who aren't necessarily excited about or ready for or want to go to the four-year college, we really dial in on them, and we have a robust co-op program where they actually go and work at 3 different businesses during a rotation during both their junior and senior year. They do have the opportunity to actually earn money during their senior year, and we do have an interview process. Again, we want to put out, we don't want to just say any student can go participate in this. There's an interview process because we want the school to reflect our best students, those students who are going to be successful on your manufacturing floors and businesses. So again, we have usually between 10 and 15 students a year in each grade who participate in the co-op program. They're also earning Ivy Tech credit. And I think Clay talked earlier about the Earn and Learn program is an amazing opportunity for 18, 19-year-old kids to get out of high school, make $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, have no college debt, and continue having the employer pay for their college. So all of a sudden they're 23, 24, they have an associate's degree, they have skilled certificates, they're making great money, they're driving really nice trucks, and also in a rural community, we're one generation from agrarian society, right? A lot of those students still are small farms. It's not large enough farms to make their only source of income, but they're able to work in manufacturing capacities and still run the local farm. And a lot of time those people are problem solvers, right? They have to weld things on the farm and fix things and build things, so those skill sets are transferable. So that's been a good program for Batesville.
Great. So all 3 of you have mentioned percentages of the students that you capture that you know are going to pursue a 4-year degree or that are going to go directly into the workforce. When should those conversations start for students? Is it 9th grade? Is it 8th grade? When is the appropriate time? And I guess also I'd like an answer with how can industry support that timeline and those conversations as well?
That's a great question. That's a $64,000 question. So I'll put on my cliche, and teaching is the profession that creates all the professions, right? So I think the more often that manufacturers are able to involve teachers and get that message into the classroom, it's impactful. Typically junior high, 7th and 8th grade is when we start talking to individuals about what manufacturing is, what it isn't. And I think probably the biggest piece that businesses need to maybe do a better job at is communicating to parents. Because again, our generation, 40, 50-year-olds, our idea of manufacturing is much different than what manufacturing really is. So again, there needs to be that communication piece to parents. And we try to get kids involved probably junior high, but robotics, you start to talk to kids about what happens in manufacturing, whether it's aerospace, diesel, stamping auto parts, caskets, hospital beds. Again, you can make a great living. And I think also businesses should know that the amount of finances you spend to recruit and retain talent, why not recruit and retain your own kids? They're used to your area. They're used to being in your neighborhoods. They don't want to move away. You don't have to worry about moving them down from Chicago. So I would encourage local business to invest in those local talents and probably have a higher retention rate.
Yeah, I will go ahead and add to that. As far as the investment of HR and business as far as marketing, I really encourage reaching out to school corporations and try to make those connections. All 3 of us up here, and I know a lot of our colleagues that are looking for those opportunities are not sure. Just like the student that graduates high school may not be aware of your business. However, if they have a voice in our school or a partnership with you with our school to be able to say, this is the the opportunity we have in addition to. Now you have some direction with students at the high school level, and I would agree that we begin marketing and pushing forth career opportunities as early as late elementary and middle school years, but really getting into the high school level, making those connections with the school corporation. Any one of us can actually get you into our high schools, talk and set up things with our principals, and getting our teachers. Our teachers are our best advocates as far as pushing students to those opportunities. And I think moving forward, what pops into my head is the old dating game. You're really not sure what you're doing, but you begin to ask questions and find out the opportunities, and then you figure out what you want to actually pick up. And I think that's the great thing is that moving forward, if businesses want to reach out, our responsibility as K-12 educators is to be agile, is to go ahead and have that flexibility to say, how does this work? And the big thing is a conversation just beforehand that we sat down here was that you have to be persistently patient and patiently persistent. And I say that why is because it takes a number of years to develop a really effective pipeline into your business from a school corporation, getting people to take that first step. A student that wants to be to graduate and start a job, and then getting that peer pressure of, wow, this is a great opportunity, and then you begin having more students go that direction. That takes a little bit of time, but that's a fix that takes effort. And I think that really comes from both sides of the table, but collaboratively, as that was brought up before, working together, you can get that done, I think, a lot easier than most people think. But it is a challenge, no question.
We start career development in our elementary school. We have speakers in all kinds of different careers. Kids really don't know. When you start talking about manufacturing, they're going home and talking to their mom and dad, and they think, oh, dirty. They think, oh, ungodly hours. So we had an open house prior to getting involved in the Ready Schools program, and we had folks from Skills for Success, Purdue University, came down and talked. Connexus, which is a manufacturing group in Indianapolis, came down and talked. It's all about education. If the businesses will come to us, we'll give them the avenue to the talent. They're helping us to develop our curriculum. For another example, at our middle school, we have a business problem of the month where a business will present us with an actual problem that they are having. Our kids then have to collaborate, put together a presentation and a solution. It's all about starting that collaborative process at an early age and getting kids used to being able to contribute.
Can I follow up on that?
Please.
I think it's important for parents and listeners to know that this is not the 1960s models where you graduate high school, you walk across the street to GM and you work at GM for 30 years. And if GM shuts down, you're in trouble. I think, again, it's important to understand that if you do go into an organization after high school, we talk to them about upward mobility, we talk about transferable skills, we talk about the opportunity to go work at other businesses once you learn a skill set at an organization. So again, this isn't your 1960s or 70s model where you're just going to work at a plant after high school. You're going there to make a difference for that organization and take care of your family.
Great. So what do you believe that perspectives are changing on a traditional four-year degree? Bob, if you'd like to kick us off with that.
I would say most definitely. With the partnerships that have been developed with Ivy Tech State College, in our case, Vincennes University, in our case, all the dual credit that's out there for students to learn, and then I know we're probably all in cooperatives where folks come out, but this particular career path has changed, and we can offer that within our own buildings. The core, the ability to collaborate, the ability to communicate. They talked about show up. All those skills are things that we're working on now. And as Paul said, this is not the 1960s type education. We're all we wouldn't be here if we weren't outside the box and creative and trying to change the way things operate.
Yeah, I would add, it's not one size fits all anymore. And I think that's the big thing is college is a great opportunity, and that's a great thing for some, but you have to understand, again, if we're the ones that are producing the clientele to move forward and move beyond that graduation stage after 12th grade, it's really giving that exposure and pushing that out. And I keep preaching that fact that when you look at Ivy Tech, you look at Vincennes, and you look at those cooperative partnerships with post-secondary education with businesses, those are great avenues as well. However, why not go directly to the client itself? Businesses can work with K-12, and in fact, when you get around some of the obvious rules of the 1960s, I know, again, sometimes it's the age of 18 is always a big obstacle that comes up. Well, we have a lot of 17-year-old seniors that if they could get their foot in the door and start the learning opportunity with businesses, that's a very tangible example of the flexibility that I begin seeing from the business world to where now it's becoming more of a norm. So the perception of once was is I think moving, and I think our job is to continue pushing and advertising the opportunities that are there.
Yeah, to say something different, I think we have a responsibility to our students and our community to kind of give kids opportunities. And again, it's an unbelievable learning experience for either a four-year student to go to college or someone goes directly to the workforce to be in your organizations and see how things are run and how it's not okay just to text your boss. You need to go make eye contact with your boss. How do you complete a formal email? All those soft skills that kids learn by being participants in co-op programs or internships is invaluable. And again, four-year college is a great opportunity. We're kind of 50-50, blue-collar, white-collar town. Four-year colleges present great opportunities, but again, it's not for everybody. So we just want to make sure we have opportunities for every student.
And I'll piggyback on that a little bit, Paul, because even if you're going to college and you're involved in these things, you still have to be a collaborator. Sure. You still have to be a good employee. And that's one of the things we learned when we did a lot of our interviews. This stuff applies to every student, not just pinholing somebody into a career.
Certainly.
Paul, you mentioned soft skills, and we actually had a question from one of our attendees. How do you develop those soft skills in school? It's not something that can be an assessment. It's not academic. So what are schools doing to develop those skills for students?
I think it sits down over a cup of coffee and you set expectations with your local businesses, and the expectation is you treat these students as you would employees. Students will rise or fall to expectations. And I know sometimes we hear about we just want to pass a drug test and be at work every day. If that's what you want, you'll get that, right? But we want you to talk to our kids about these are the expectations about what we expect all employees to do. These are things you can do to be successful. And if they do send you a text, don't accept it, right? As a business, you need to respond back and say, no, you're supposed to, we've set the expectations. I need you to email me. I need you to call me. And again, push those expectations. And don't get me wrong, there'll be growing pains. There'll be learning curves. Some kids will be better than others. But again, we appreciate as schools when those businesses hold those students accountable. And again, you're gonna test drive that student. You're maybe gonna hire that student, and it's a low it's a low investment. Like if they can be part of your organization during high school, and they start to have those skill sets, you're more likely to hire them. And we tell our kids that if you want to work there, you need to follow their expectations.
Yeah, I echo the same thing as Paul said about expectations. I would add to that when you think about students and the actual experiences they would have with business, again, it's experience and it's the collaboration. If we are preparing to have students make the jump from K-12 to the business world, then working together, we can build that bridge to make it happen. And I think that's a critical piece. The soft skills don't happen by sitting in a classroom and just taking a test. Test takers, that would be the older perception, but we want the hands-on, interactive, critical thinking student. And then you add that to the experiences that the real world would provide, and you bridge that together. Now you're preparing them for what the next step is. And I think that's the important piece. It's not just graduation, but it's preparing for that next step.
In our particular instance, our kids are involved with business opportunities every single day. You talk about quality control. If they produce a product that's not to the quality, they're called on the carpet right there. That's a great experience for a high school kid. What do you mean that's not good enough? Well, it's not good enough here. It's not good enough for your customer. And you have to be able to solve those problems. Our business program that we put in, our student CEO and our student CFO had to come and report to our school board. You talk about have to put a PowerPoint together and be able to present just like they would be out out in the real work world, those type of experiences are invaluable for kids. And we're just starting this on the bottom floor. There are others who are ahead of us. Brown County High School is doing a tremendous job with a student-led business. They get the experience while they're there. We've been accepted into the Connexus apprenticeship, so every one of our juniors and seniors are doing an apprenticeship. You talk about hands-on experience. So we're excited about it. It's outside the box, but it's neat to be able to, Paul talked about his kids getting paid. Our students could make $2,400 a year. They get their diploma from me. They get a check from the school board president across the stage. You talk about a great experience.
Well, I mean, that just puts more emphasis on work-based learning and internship opportunities for students in high school. That's the only way they will develop these skill sets for life after high school. So great transition to our final panel. We'll take a few minutes of break time and we'll come back together to discuss more about work-based learning and how to address barriers that might exist. Thank you. Appreciate your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So for our third and final panel today, we've convened all of our panelists with the addition of Secretary Blair and Milo to address breaking down barriers and how we can adapt from others with best practices. So Secretary Blair Milo, if you don't mind introducing yourself to our group today, I'd love to hear from you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. A huge thank you to Major Toole for hosting us today and to all the panelists for the great wisdom that you've imparted thus far. I have the opportunity to serve as the Secretary of Career Connections and Talent for the state of Indiana. I am the first person to serve in this role, and I come to this position having previously served as the mayor of LaPorte, sometimes known as the Hub of Awesome. And what we found in the Hub, as awesome as it was and is, was that there were many new job opportunities that we were creating, but we were struggling to get people connected to those different types of positions. And so as the governor created this position with the idea to be able to bridge some of the divides of the different stakeholder groups that are a part of connecting people to work, then I was greatly honored to be able to join his team to serve in this capacity where we think about how do we attract, develop, and connect talent, thinking about growing the population, increasing our education attainment levels, and ensuring that people are connecting to these different job opportunities. And so I have the opportunity to work across the state with incredible employers, with economic development officials, with superintendents, with school principals, mayors, all sorts of folks who have an incredibly critical role to play in ensuring that we are developing the ecosystem to attract, develop, and connect talent across the entire system. So it is a treat for me to be here today to discuss some of the different, not only challenges, but really opportunities that we have to be able to collaborate together to ensure that we're connecting people to opportunity.
Well, great. And if you don't mind, I'd love for you to kick off with our first question, since you've got more of a statewide perspective. What are some of the barriers that you've seen with educators and employers collaborating?
Sure. I think that there is a tendency to have almost sort of different languages that are spoken by educators and employers, and certainly recognizing that that there is a common goal, I think, shared by each entity, and that wanting to be able to prepare students for the world of work and also wanting to ensure that there is a future workforce to be able to come and fill different types of positions. But how we go about some of those things and maybe just some cultural elements can be barriers. But what I see as solutions are just any number of conversations that are taking place, and really consistent conversations that take place beyond just a first discussion around, what are some of the different needs within the workplace, recognizing that technology is changing a lot of that at a faster pace than we've seen before, which really brings a lot of opportunity in many ways, but it requires for this consistent conversation to go on between our education system and our employers to make sure that our students are aware of what the kinds of opportunities are, and then having opportunities to gain the skills, and hopefully all along their educational experience, starting, even with age-appropriate things in pre-K, all the way up to hopefully then as they're moving into post-secondary, having a blending of learning and working experiences.
That's great. Anyone else like to contribute to that? Barriers that you've seen and programs or anything in your school system?
I don't know if it's a barrier, but maybe it's an important piece about building relationships with K-12 institutions. Again, Secretary Milo talked about it. It's different languages, and sometimes they don't handshake very well. But I think as a business, if I could give a piece of advice, is build a relationship with K-12. Simple as calling the high school principal, go, hey, we have 12 workers who can work at your football gate this Friday. How can we help you? And not an artificial relationship. And again, to cultivate an organic relationship will pay huge dividends to organizations across the state of Indiana, regardless of where you're located. I think K-12 institution would appreciate that simple gesture. Whether it doesn't always have to be monetary, right? A lot of times you feel like people call you, ask if you're a check, but maybe it's you come help judge a Rube Goldberg contest, or you help do something in the school corporation. Again, to build that relationship would pay dividends for the business. Matt?
Yeah, I'll add to that is in addition to actually building that relationship, it's really starting those actual dialogues and having those meetings and understanding that having a meeting or two is not going to get it done. It takes an awful lot of work, and it does take time. I mentioned it earlier, but it really takes a focused effort. And what can you do to be flexible, to be able to provide and get that cultural language of this side of the table to match up with the cultural language of this side of the table? And that changing culture or adjusting culture so that it can fit with the other side of the table, and making that bridge takes a lot of work, because that's the way you do things. And so I know in K-12, my language in K-12 is a lot different than, say, manufacturing language. So when I sit and listen to businesses talk, a lot of times I just sit and listen because I realize how little I know. However, if we're going to go ahead and truly develop pipelines and opportunities for students, we have to be able to pick up those opportunities, put them together, and create those bridges for our students.
I think one of the important things from the school aspect is that I think for a long time, schools waited for you all to come to us. One of the things that we've learned in the last 5 years is that we need to be going to you. As I said earlier, we conducted 1,100 interviews, same 8 questions for every employer, but it was amazing how little we really were doing what needed to be done. And so I think it's important that we are just as aggressive on the K-12 side as you are on the manufacturing side coming to talk to us.
So business perspective, real quickly. First of all, I think it's probably easier to connect with rural than it is to connect with urban schools. And the reason is you have smaller, the communities are together. You're living in the same community. So in Logansport, Indiana, where we have several plants, that's an easier connection for us to make than it is, say, in Indianapolis or in Los Angeles or, El Paso, Texas, or wherever else we may have a plant. So just one additional barrier. Second, just as a thought, one of the reasons I think businesses it's so easy to go to a college is because they have a placement center. And so from a business perspective, I know exactly who to call. I can go online, I can find out who I need to be in touch with to interact with students or get on an interview list or whatever it is. Where in high schools it's not so clear, right? I'd love to call Bob, and maybe after this, there's I'm sure I could call Bob and say, hey, how do I get involved in what's going on at White River Valley School District? But generally speaking, what's the touch point for a business? Is it to go through the principal? Is it to go through career counselors? And that's the unknown to begin that relationship. It usually takes a high-level executive, whether it's human resources or CEO, to get in touch with, frankly, a principal who's progressive enough to be thinking the way that you three are, which I'm guessing is relatively unique. That's what I see. The other thing is, one more. Businesses are excited to be involved in education. And you guys know that, but maybe the rest of the audience doesn't. Businesses are excited to be involved in education. We'll come to, judge contests, to speak in your classes, to teach students. We've had several high school interns in our organization, whether it's on the technical side in design. Providence Cristo Rey has a great, in Indianapolis, has a great sort of work education model, and so we've had several Providence Cristo Reys act as interns in our organization. So we love to be involved in the educational side, not only as business people, but just as members of the community, to be able to invest in these wonderful children that will make a difference for us in the future. So, all right, Malik, I'll shut up now.
Oh, it's great. Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
I think Clay's right, and I guess sometimes it's reflective, especially when you go through something and you look at yourself and you say, where could I have done better? And all of a sudden it becomes very apparent, and it's like, to that point, who do we turn to? You're right. When one of our facilities is next to Manual High School, and I would love to reach out and perhaps channel certain students there that maybe have more of an aptitude for a skilled job, welding, whatever it might be. But how do I go about it? There aren't those obvious paths. And I do have through an affiliation with Garfield Park, I know somebody who knows somebody, and I'm trying to connect with that person to try to connect with somebody at Manual. And you're right, and I do think we get a little complacent as a manufacturer. I do think that we get to the point where people come to us, and perhaps we don't do as well reaching out or identifying who we are, and we can do better for sure. We can. I know that you said before that you expected the employers to come to you, and perhaps though on our side, especially as a manufacturer who has been around a long time, we could be doing a lot better to let you know who we are also. So maybe there's a certain meeting in the middle of doing better.
So Katie, I love what you said, that employers should do better. But how do you, and this is probably for the educators here, how do you start? If employers are interested in bringing more students into their facility and they want to reach out to schools, and I know communication is a barrier. Schools and employers don't know how to communicate. So how do you start? What is the best avenue that an employer should take if they want to explore this opportunity further?
Yeah, so number one, I wrote something to Clay down, is that we assume sometimes we just know who the contact person is. So again, that's a takeaway from me, Clay. And to Katie, your point, that really to be a good relationship needs to be an equal push and pull. And the easiest way to start is probably based on the school size, because there's so many different variances in school district sizes, is reach out to the superintendent. And the superintendent will probably be able to direct that organization to a high school principal, to a career counselor, sometimes a cold call to a high school principal. They're busy. Again, Matt talked about the cultural differences. I mean, they're just busy people, and we're all busy people, but they're less likely to maybe call you back. But if the superintendent says, hey, I need you to call Clay back, Katie back, the principal's probably going to call that individual back. So I would say your easy, low-hanging fruit is reach out to local district offices. Matt, I don't know, but you have a large district. What would you recommend?
No, I agree with that. I think because there are so many differences as far as school corporations, I think as a business you really have a plan of action. But it is to reach out. I would agree, to a superintendent office from there. And one call or one email may not work. You need to go ahead and continue trying, because every district is different and how that flows. But once you can make that connection that, hey, here's what I would like to do. I want to reach out. This is how I want to make this happen. A superintendent can make those things happen in their district a lot easier than anyone else.
And it's okay to be aggressive.
Yeah. Agreed.
And I would echo that. I mean, they're certainly the experts here, that reaching out to school is a great place to start. If you don't necessarily have a relationship, your economic development officials can also be tremendous resources, because I know that oftentimes businesses have a relationship, maybe with a business retention and expansion coordinator, or with the director of the economic development official, that a lot of times they have some more in-depth insight into those different roles within the school corporation, so they can be an asset in the conversations as well.
So this is probably for industry representatives that are here, what do you see, if you do employ students or you have interns in your facilities, what do you see as the benefit directly to your company, providing these work-based learning opportunities to students?
From our perspective, an internship we've done internships, but at a college level. We've done internships for engineering and made good hires through internships. As far as the maybe perhaps entertaining junior, senior high school students, would probably even be more impactful for us if we could bring students in at an earlier age and let them get a feel for what we do and what manufacturing is about, and see if it's something that they embrace. And I think at that point we benefit, because if the student chooses to stay with us, if there is a job, there are of course those things to think about too, but also giving a skill set to somebody out of high school that gives them an extra advantage, I would say, to other students. They already have some valuable skill sets that they can take beyond high school and hopefully use that to get employed more readily and at a higher pay. A lot of our pay is progressive. It's step pay. We do progressions. It's to certain levels, and once you reach certain levels, you get an automatic pay progression if you've identified those skill sets and you can demonstrate them. My goodness, that's a great head start. But then also, it was said earlier, and I do appreciate it, setting expectations. I love that. We setting expectations. People do rise to expectations. Sometimes they just need to know what they are, and it's something that we're trying very hard in manufacturing to talk about. People generally want to do well. They just need to know what the expectation is, and then there have to be consequences, right? So having students learn those skill sets alone, the accountability, the expectation, will put them head and shoulders above their peers.
So we have done internships quite a bit at the college level as well. In the last couple of years, we've done the Connexus high school internship program. One of those summer students ended up being a intern during school then for us, and was he learned a lot. He spent some time in engineering. He went on to college, graduated, and is getting his engineering degree, and probably come back and work for us part-time during breaks on occasion when he has the ability. So it really is the pitch of awareness. How do we get students involved to see that as an option, see what actually physically happens, and not just on the manufacturing floor. There are so many different types of occupations within manufacturing. It might be an accounting internship, but it's still within manufacturing. So how do we really try to reach those kids at an earlier age? And we also do job shadows. So frequently we will have an employee have a child's friend or family to come and spend a day. And so it doesn't have to be a full internship. It can be, how do we just get them in for a day to see what their level of interest is, and how does it match up with some of the things that they might be able to do?
And on our side, we have done high school internships, as I said a little earlier. And I guess from a benefit standpoint, and by the way, we've never hired any of them. They've never come to work for our organization, but they're phenomenal, call it folks marketing, throughout the rest of their school to say, hey, I work at, ABC Metals, and they're a great company. You ought to look at them as well. So that they're great from a marketing standpoint, but more importantly, we generally will assign a sort of a younger leader or a younger person to manage them, because they'll connect better usually with the high school kids. And so it's a supervision development opportunity for people internally. So we get lots of benefits that way. But the best benefit of all is that we get this breath of fresh air, wonderful young person in our organization who we get a love on. And that is an amazing human community sort of thing that it's a massive blessing for us as we've done the internship. So whether they come to work for you or not, doesn't make a difference. I think the idea is the impact you can make, not only on the student, but also on the people in your organization who are trying to engage and feed into the young student, immensely beneficial for everybody.
So Blair, I'd like to directly ask you, and then Bob, Matt, and Paul, I'd like you to kind of, fill in about how this is important for students. From a local talent development standpoint, why is, from students to educators, why is it important that we provide these kind of opportunities to schools?
Well, I think that particularly as we're seeing so much transition in the world of work with just, like I referenced earlier, the changing technology, some of the different cultural aspects, different demographics that we see shifting, then having the awareness around the different kinds of opportunities and the different skills being developed all along the way are so critical for the students' opportunity as they're progressing on what will be their career path, whatever it may be, and for the employers to be able to have access to that talent pipeline that is able to connect with the kinds of opportunities that are coming forward. And as was heard, having that early engagement is so valuable because it develops a relationship for the employer to connect up earlier with some of the students due to the things you just heard, and for the students to start to understand, what are some of the expectations, what is a culture like of a workplace, what is an employer looking for, and being able to develop those employability skills that are going to be critical no matter what career area they go into. And the opportunity to do that in an environment where it's kind of hands-on, where you're able to really experience why this is important is so valuable, and the learning experience that way, when you've lived it rather than read about it or heard about it from an instructor, then it resonates so much more for that student to adopt that into what their work style may be. And there's a wide range as to whether students may get that outside of any kind of this experience. They may or may not get it from a home environment. They may or may not get it from a classroom environment. And so when they have that kind of experience in a workplace type of environment, then it's they're able to see that example. And there's so many different ways that can be cultivated in a way that works for the student, for the school, and for the employer. We've touched on internships, job shadows. There's just a whole realm of creative options for what those experiences can look like that create such value for the employer to have access to the talent that they need, and students to develop the skills, the awareness of what the opportunities are for them and their families moving forward.
Thank you.
I think opportunity awareness is huge for kids. The workforce is changing, society is changing, and the one common denominator is education. Everybody is getting an education. What you do with that opportunity, what you do with that to build that relationship is paramount to where we want kids to end up. He talked earlier about, it's all about, we want our kids to get a diploma, yes, but we want our kids to have a life, to have a career. And if we can give them those opportunities earlier so they know what's out there, it's just a win-win.
Yeah, I'll segue right into that as well. As Clay mentioned, as far as just the different opportunities and what you can do with a young child that's really looking for an opportunity. I just go back to the fact that if anyone that graduates from our school district that really doesn't have anything to do when they're 18, 19, 20, who and what are they contributing to? And that's really where I would take personal and fall to K-12 is that, hey, we can get you a diploma, but what's next? And I think that's where, again, investment by K-12 and investment by manufacturing and by business coming together and developing and getting things to grow. Having a career day, having an internship, but actually a school district that works to develop courses that will develop a pathway to graduate while a business can continue using those individuals in that pathway sequence of courses to be able to get the high school diploma, but then give that student experience while you're doing long-term interviews. And I think that's where the real investment is, and that I try to advocate for manufacturing is the investment of money into K-12 and starting and getting ahead of an early exposure and being able to hook students before they get out into the workplace where they're out on their own, and then everyone's sort of soliciting what may be going on. You can get on the front end of a junior, senior in high school and really cultivate the soft skills and the things that really bring them together. You can go ahead and groom those students for your business, and you're making a very appropriate investment in getting the talent that you need. Because that's ultimately what our state needs, is the development of talent that stays here and is able to transition not just to college, but really to the entire workforce. And that's why we're sitting here today, is that how do we move students to K-12 opportunity and graduation to manufacturing in the workforce.
It was just a different perspective. I think Kendra talked about a lot of students sometimes during class saying, when will I ever use this? Why am I trying to learn this? And you'll see a light bulb go off in a lot of these co-op, and there'll be an educational relevance. They'll understand that it's important to collaborate and you produce something. A lot of times in school, you turn your homework in, but now I have to collaborate with people to produce a product. And again, those skill sets that kids learn on those manufacturing floors. And you're right. A lot of times we forget you need HR, you need leadership, you need a lot of different skill sets in an organization. So I think it's important for all types of students to have those experiences because they make us a better society. They really do. And it gives kids tools to be successful.
So students that you guys have that are actually involved in an internship or a work-based learning opportunity, how did that start? Is it a program that you may have in your community? Was it something that you created with curriculum? How do you start something like that?
It actually started with Batesville Tool and Die, I think 7 years ago in Batesville, Indiana, and Ivy Tech. And again, just start over a cup of coffee, and that's kind of the running joke. Like Matt said earlier, it can't be 1 or 2 meetings. It has to almost be a weekly cup of coffee where you say, these are the barriers we face as a school, and industry says, these are the barriers we have. How can we overcome those barriers? Because I think the biggest learning curve is there's no one size fits all for any school or any community. And I think you have to be willing to sit down and problem solve together. And again, it was about workforce development, and it was about getting kids college credit. And we just sat down and said, what works? And the understanding of how schools work and how business work, there's a mutual benefit. I know as a superintendent, I learn something every time I'm in a room with business leaders, and it makes your school better. And I think hopefully the same occurs when business leaders are sitting in with our students. And I love the point what Clay talked about. I see a lot of energy go into those facilities when those younger students come in there and they just change things up and they ask silly questions. And again, just kind of lightens it. And you talked about optimism, and maybe that's one of being a positive attitude. A lot of times those kids just able to be sponges and learn from those older employees, and it's good for the older employees. So again, just sit down, have a cup of coffee, and talk about what you want to accomplish together.
Yeah, the one size fits all cliche is perfect for this meeting, because this is starting my 8th year in Decatur Township as superintendent, and it started at the beginning of that tenure where identifying community partnerships. And that's from businesses, that's with colleges, that's with everyone involved, sitting down and having that cup of coffee and actually beginning to explore, hey, what's your interest? What can you do? And really trying to find out, can I make what they want happen, and vice versa. And the end game has been the same all the way across the board, is getting students to graduate and have opportunity. So keeping that as a focus as a school district, the conversations might have been one time with someone and then it never went any further because it didn't develop. But having multiple meetings with multiple businesses, where I'm at in Indianapolis, you strike out a lot right now, but then you continue pushing forward and finding those fits. I'll bring up Ivy Tech as far as the opportunity to develop early college pathway with Stoops diesel mechanics. That's something that we're developing right now, and that would be for course credit, high school, college credit, and then obviously have a great job opportunity. And that's maybe 15 minutes away from us as far as our high school. But that is a result of 3 different partnerships, business, Post-secondary and K-12 coming together, having multiple meetings and taking a lot of time. And that's as a result of having meetings with a lot of different folks to where you eventually get to the goal of getting those students those opportunities for high wage, high skill jobs, and having that career after they walk across the stage.
I think for us, our involvement in the County Economic Development Commission was a huge eye-opening experience, and that's where we started having the appropriate conversations, looking at what our school curriculum could be and recognizing what our students needed most to be successful. This has to be a partnership, has to be a lot of give and take, and as educators, a lot of times we're in a box. Well, these guys wouldn't be here if they're not trying to tear down the box. We're very outside the box oriented. We have to be. Where I'm at in rural, the survival of our district depends on it. So we were looking for ways to deliver things to our students that the schools around us couldn't do. And they weren't willing to take the risk. Everybody's all worried about, my A school grade because of test scores. Well, it's about a lot more than test scores. It's about getting kids what they need to be successful in life. And when you start having those tough conversations, how do I change? How do I make it better? And you start listening to the business professionals around you and gaining the experience from their experience, it becomes a lot easier. And the end game for the area business is developing the local talent. That's how they want our best kids. And so they give and we give and we meet in the middle, and the meetings that happen, sometimes it's about taking a risk.
Mm-hmm.
So are there barriers that, and I'm not picking on you, I promise, are there barriers that the government puts out there that are problematic for establishing that relationship with the employment or with the employers in the communities?
Well, I'll just speak for ours. The governor's new CTE programs actually helped us because we're a small rural school and revenue is tight. Revenue's going to get tighter. But by putting in a program where every single junior and senior has an apprenticeship, that helps us funding wise as well. So you have to be able to it's like a big puzzle. You have to be able to put together all the pieces.
Good.
Yeah, I think when we reference those conversations that you have to continually have, you identify each other's boxes that were restricted, and then you figure out how to troubleshoot why I can't do this, why you can't do that. And then you begin to find solutions for those things and say, how can we make this work? I think that's the biggest thing, is that you just have to stay determined and get and dedicate time and effort to it. I'm fortunate as a school district that we have a director of college and career readiness. That would be who I would go ahead and say that contact this person and begin having that conversation, because I can't do that just on my own with all the different things that I may be doing, as well as say my principal at the high school. So there has to be a continual focus in finding ways to overcome the obstacles that you're referencing, because there are many, and if you just sit back and say, well, I can't do X, Y, and Z, then you're really not serious about the conversation.
I think school accountability is an elephant in the room, right? But I think if there would be a shift, and there's no superintendent that's not going to be held accountable for our actions in our communities. But I think if there was a shift overall in the state of Indiana to incentivize greatness instead of be punitive in nature, right now accountability is punitive in nature. And I think you see a greater response to when you incentivize superintendents to lead districts to do things. And right now, unfortunately, Bob talked about it, there's not really that statewide incentive for superintendents to do that, because they have other boxes they have to check first.
So Paul, how can industry support providing incentive for students and teachers?
I think it's a long-term commitment. I know that some of the numbers I've seen is we have a lot of retirees, and we need 1 million employees over the next 10 years. And there just happens to be about 1 million students in public education. Obviously, not every student is going to work in manufacturing, but I think the cultivation of those relationships and those conversations with policymakers about what is important, what should accountability dashboards look like. And again, one size fits all just doesn't work. And that's not a knock on anybody, just as a reflection that it's hard to make make one accountability system for 1 million different types of learners and communities. So again, just that collaborative spirit between policymakers, business, and schools. Let's make an accountability platform that serves the needs for local communities.
Yeah, and I like the word incentivize. I think literally happy to be accountable, like Paul said, no problem with that piece. But to truly motivate K-12 and business to collaborate, why wouldn't you want to go ahead and incentivize that? And that's an additional motivation to be able to build those relationships. And I think that if the priority is set that if schools are able to do X, Y, and Z, then they will receive benefits, whatever that would look like. That's obviously a determinant, even down to a teacher where we can bargain, collectively bargain to where we could pay teachers money to incentivize them to help us in the organization. Why would anyone in K-12 education help support what we're discussing if there is no reward system? And I think that's a very big elephant in the room, that if you can begin rewarding those, or just by encouraging this conversation across the entire state, we'll start seeing people matching up and getting results a lot better.
So I'd like to remind attendees we've allocated this time to take questions, and I'll ask the group the first question. Who should the schools be contacting within businesses and industries to make connections for internship and job shadowing? We've heard from the educators who's the good point of contact, so industry. Should it be the president and CEO or the vice president of HR?
I would say that we're all different. I am somebody who likes to be very involved, but not everybody is the same. I personally would take phone calls, emails, whatever. Our HR, VP of HR, Tracy Girth, would as well. So I think each organization would have a different structure and a different avenue where they would want to field those. Again, I am somebody who would absolutely welcome personal phone calls. My cell phone is listed on my voicemail for my desk line. So I don't know what the rest of the team thinks, but Tracy Girth as well for HR.
For us, it's probably HR. They can reach out to anyone. Mike is always involved and happy to lead tours and make those connections. But a lot of times, if it's someone other than myself who is contacted, they ultimately funnel it to HR as just kind of the central command and planning.
And we're the same. You can call me. I'll get you the right people. I probably won't be the direct contact for that relationship, though sometimes that may happen. And it has happened for some of the internship programs and things like that. But mostly what I'm going to do is I'll probably route you. We've actually split the human resource function into a human resource group that's much more about payroll, benefits, compliance, that kind of stuff, in a group that we call human development, which is really about how do we develop the whole person, how do we recruit the right folks, and how do we develop them really from cradle to grave, from the time they start to the time they leave our organization, from both a life and a skills perspective. And this kind of interaction with high schools, an Ivy Tech, a university, would be handled by that group. So ultimately, I'd route you to Kent Snyder and his team to interact with the school systems.
Another question we got: what are your companies doing to promote your opportunities for diversity? And Blair, if you're seeing this around the statewide, please share what you've encountered as well.
Sure.
Not enough. Sorry.
No, I'll let industry speak first.
No, sorry. I wasn't sure if you were pausing to. All right. Not enough. And we have a large Latino population, but that's just because where we are in a lot of our areas has a high Latino population. But outside that, it sort of reflects the population that exists in our communities. And I think we need to look at ourselves in the mirror and look hard and see what else we can do to reach out into places that aren't, call it easy for us to get into, or instead of sitting back, letting people come to us, reaching out, that's a better way of putting it. Instead of sitting back, waiting for folks to come and apply to our organization, getting out and being much more aggressive at recruiting a much more diverse population. And as manufacturers, we tend to, historically, it's you sit back and someone applies and then you look at their information and make a decision on whether you're going to hire them or not. And we could do a lot better job than we are.
So we are a defense contractor, so we are also an affirmative action employer, not just an equal opportunity employer. So we do spend a lot of time trying to, particularly the high school level, reaching out to high schools in our local community, even some of the grade schools around in our specific neighborhood, trying to do a lot of community agencies or community functions that are in our local neighborhood. We have a very diverse population in metropolitan Indianapolis, and so we do focus on trying to get the word out through various, other than just a regular job posting or advertising, but trying to make some personal connections.
And I would say, Kendra and Clay, you probably do better than us. And again, it's reflective. When I think about our history and our hiring, one of the facilities is on the east, near south side of Indianapolis by Garfield Park, like I said earlier, Emmanuel High School. And a lot of the hires through our 80 years have been a lot of times referrals from friends, nepotism, family and family referring family. And it becomes kind of its own thing. I would say it's changed recently, especially during our own reflection, but during our big increase that we went through a couple of years ago. And we reached out to temp agencies, and we used a lot of temp agencies, and really, quite frankly, got a range of skill sets, and some people adapted and some didn't. The diversity part of it, though, we probably in our own community aren't known well enough who we are. And we need to, that's something, I think, again, we've just been ingrained in our ways. And I think it's just one of those things that we need to reach out to a broader base of audience, I would say, in order to attract more people to us and what we do. So again, it's reflective, and I'll leave here, thinking about what we need to be doing better, for sure.
And Katie, do you think that providing work-based learning opportunities and internships alleviates some of that recruitment
I think it would be wonderful
strategy that you guys have?
Our business, again, and different minds that come in and different creative thinking, it's always welcome. And I always love hearing other people's opinions. And when they come in, and some manufacturers or some business owners, there's the stigma that they can be very closed-minded and they don't want to change, and they don't want to hear other people's opinions or admit that they've been wrong. And I would say that for me, that's not the case at all. I want to get better. I want to be better as a manufacturer. So I guess in general, if we were to do an internship, we never did the lower level internships, and we used to have like an age policy, and you can't be on the floor at a certain age. I think that needs to change, and in order for people to understand who we are, we have to open up the door to students of a younger age. And let them come in and see who we are and what we do. We need to have more community involvement. We probably need to have a community day. My list goes on, and believe me, my mind races with thought. So there's a lot of opportunity to be better.
Great.
I would add in just really kind of underscoring the theme of what you heard here of the solutions that are coming forward come from intentionality and spending time to recognize, cultural barriers that have existed, historical barriers that have existed, systemic barriers that have existed, to then think about and get to understand why they have existed, and then think about how do we break those down in order to create more equitable opportunities. And I've certainly been a part of a number of conversations recently where there's actually been pushback on the term of looking at diversity and inclusion, recognizing that diversity in and of itself doesn't go far enough to think about how are we actually empowering people from different backgrounds, different lived experiences to have success, not only entering the workplace, but continuing in their development opportunities all along the way. And when you mention work-based learning as a solution towards addressing some of these inequities that we see and differences in opportunities, then I can think to some of the work that our team has been trying to do of thinking about how do we get to populations where we clearly are not seeing the kinds of engagement that we would hope to, and having these kinds of conversations to understand the barriers. And I've had some of these conversations where I've talked through some of the different resources that we have of different educational opportunities, and I'm met with the response of, this seems real nice, and thanks a heap for coming out here and having this conversation, but how does this lead to me getting a job? And that's where I think when we have the experiences where an individual is able to have work-based learning, that then they're able to see that connection to the job at the end of that becomes the light at the end of the tunnel, where in previous circumstances, and I certainly have had this idea myself that I've always understood, if I go through the education, then it's going to lead to me getting a job. For many individuals, that hasn't been the case for a wide variety of different reasons. And so if the more that we can marry up the job with the educational opportunity, then it's clear to that individual as to what the outcome is going to be, and they're much more likely to progress in those kinds of opportunities and then have opportunities so that, again, the business has access to a much more diverse workforce that's coming from very different lived experiences, that then have had some different kinds of barriers, but then is so rewarded, I think, from the diversity that comes from having those different lived experiences speaking into the work that gets done.
And Malika, can I put a plug in?
Yes, please.
So we were talking earlier about technology and how it's changing in the future, and that we need people to still work with that technology. It's not going to eliminate the human factor in the workforce. And Katie and I were having a sidebar conversation about maintenance, industrial maintenance, and how every single manufacturer needs maintenance people. There isn't, we could talk about all the different jobs that we have at our facilities and the special training that it requires, but every manufacturer needs a maintenance person. And it's one of the hardest to find skill sets, and it's truly an expertise. And we're talking about work-based learning at high schools, but there is almost a statewide effort. It's called FAME, and that is specifically to have a work-based learning program through a post-secondary institution, both through Ivy Tech in the Fort Wayne area and Vincennes in the Indianapolis and Southern Indiana area. And those opportunities like that, where we can get high school students interested in manufacturing and say, hey, guess what? You can also get a college degree while you're getting experience, and you're getting paid, and you're going to get paid enough to pay for your degree. That's what FAME is about. It's a very specific occupation, but we could take those principles of how the education is set up and the work-based learning opportunity with employers, and do that with different skill sets. It doesn't have to be industrial maintenance. So that's where we're starting, and if anybody's interested, you can call me, and we will hook you up into how to become an industrial maintenance person in the state of Indiana. We will find you a job and get you plugged into a 2-year associate's degree where you get paid to do it.
That's great. That's great. And so final question, and that's a great segue to this, because we want to bring more exposure to programs like InFame. This is for the education community. Are there offices, or do you have a point contact who's kind of creating a strategy to connect talent to job opportunities, or a high school graduate to a program like InFame?
We have a community foundation in Batesville, Batesville Community Education Foundation, BCEF. Just started a platform called Bulldogs Connect, and it's run by People Grove. It's modeled after a program out of Texas A&M, and it's Bulldogs helping Bulldogs. And for lack of a better term, it's LinkedIn for employers and graduates from Batesville Community School Corporation to high school students. And it serves twofold. It serves as job postings for employers, but also serves as connections for students who might be interested in different career paths, to be able to have somebody, a vetted person on the other end of an email they can reach out to. Hey, Batesville High School graduate 1986, I see you're a CPA, I'm thinking about accounting. Give me some advice. So again, I think there's some opportunity to create some platforms where you just connect employers, graduates, and students together on a safe platform. So that's something Batesville's doing, just first year of a 3-year plan to kind of have that platform.
In Decatur Township, we actually have a person, Dr. Chris Duesenberry. She's our Director of College and Career Readiness. She, along with our principal at our School for Excellence, who his title also adds Work-Based Learning Director. Two of them are our point people as far as working with community and other businesses, as far as having those conversations. And I alluded to that dating game analogy, but going out and actually trying to find those opportunities to where we can evolve our pathways into those business connections, to where we can get those students to have those opportunities when they graduate from high school. So we do it very specifically, but we're out there reaching out for really anything that's available, because every time we scaffold or build a relationship, that again is an opportunity for our children.
In Southwest Indiana, we have the regional ROI group, which is, it comes from the Lilly Foundation, gave 7 different areas around the state a lot of money. They could attack through the job opportunities in commerce, or through education, or both. They had a program called the Ready Schools Program. It comes with a $130,000 planning grant. So that's where we took the year and went out and talked to businesses and had the opportunity to see exactly what we needed to build in a curriculum. And then we had to apply for an implementation grant from them. They gave us $250,000 more to build our business program, things like CNC machines, the technology upgrades, where, you know, we're a small rural school on an operating referendum. We had to go out and in order to attack some of these things and find the funds to do that. So we've put together $375,000 of grants to get equipment and to operate. And now, as we've launched our business, student-led business program, we have connected each of those businesses with a community business, and so that's how we're reaching out with the local talent.
So I knew I was going to feel this way, but we're at time, and I could spend all day talking about this with you guys. So thank you so much for your time today and offering your perspectives on this panel. It's like you all said, it just takes one conversation, and hopefully we can take some of these ideas and the practices you guys have discussed and kind of scale it statewide, and people like Secretary Blair and Milo to help us do that. So thank you again. Mike, any parting words you'd like to offer?
Thank you, Malika. Just again, echoing that, quick thank you to Carrie Hacker from the Indiana chapter of the National Tool Machining Association for running today's event. Thank you, Malika. Awesome job moderating. Incredible panel. There's so many takeaways from this. I hope that our online audience is taking notes. And as you can see, we have a great group of educators here that are doing some incredible things in the community. You heard from the need from the manufacturers in this room today. Yeah, we have a lot of people that are going to be retiring from this industry. We have a lot of jobs to fill. But man, there's some awesome things that are going on. And I think there's a lot of schools and businesses that are online today that hopefully can take something away and do something in their community to help promote manufacturing careers. One last thing, I know the first Friday in October is Manufacturing Day, but I'll say this, every day in the state of Indiana is Manufacturing Day. So thank you all for attending today.